This is Mike Consol. Welcome to the program. Thank you for listening in. I'm going to make an argument that the reason why so many of us struggle to write and the reason so many people deplore writing dates all the way back to when we were first in school in English class with an instructor who never really taught us how to write. And now I'm not going to impugn every English teacher in America, but I would make the argument that the vast preponderance of English teachers really don't teach us how to write. What they teach us is grammar and punctuation. Then they give us a writing assignment. And then what they do is they penalize us for the infractions, grammatical infractions, mistakes in punctuation. And so right off the bat, we become defensive writers. We're not really writing at all. What we're doing is being taught to write and edit at the same time. That's something that will dog us for the rest of our lives. We're taught to write and edit at the same time, which is the equivalent of hitting the accelerator in your car and the brake at the same time. It gets you nowhere. So this punitive style of education that English teachers convey to us is carried forward. Now, if you love writing like I do, you know that writing's always going to be a struggle. It's going to have its struggles because it's just an exacting sort of activity. But having said that, it's compounded by the way we were taught from the beginning. Now, instead, what English teachers should have been doing is challenging us to exercise our imagination, to show bravery on the page, to show imagination, and to really let ourselves think freely, to be able to write with abandon and be rewarded, graded on that and rewarded for showing good imagination, some storytelling skills, and so on. Then, and only then, after we have learned to write, to attempt to really let our minds run free, should an English instructor be then superimposing over that written piece by teaching us grammar and punctuation, teaching us how to superimpose what we have written with correct grammar. Absolutely, we need correct grammar and punctuation. I would never argue to the contrary of that. But we should have been told, write quickly, write without overthinking each and every phrase and sentence, that real writing involves flooding the zone or flooding the page, flooding the document. That means that whatever we have to say, we should be saying it in many more words than we're going to use in the final product. Why? Because unless we allow the bad writing to flow, we're not going to get the most optimal good writing out of what we're capable of. So we need to, it would be no different for a songwriter. It would be no different for a choreographer. You think Twyla Tharp, if she's got a dance recital that involves 350 moves, that's all she's done is created 350 choreographic moves? Absolutely not. She's probably experimented with a few thousand, and then she's distilled it down to maybe those 350. And that's what writing involves, is flooding the page, flooding the zone, whatever zone we're writing to, whether it's a word processor, a legal pad, and we're handwriting, or it's a conventional typewriter. I don't care what it is. Whatever that zone is, we flood it, and then we go through that distillation process where we boil it down. We start paring away all the junk. These are the things that our English teachers really never told us. Now, I'm sure there are good English teachers out there. I'm very confident of that. And you may have been lucky enough to have had one of those teachers. And again, I'm not impugning every English teacher out there. They were probably never taught to write. They were taught just teach grammar, teach punctuation, and then put red marks on the paper everywhere it didn't work. Everywhere they misspelled a word and everywhere there was a semicolon used wrongly. So that defensive writing encased us in a suit of armor when we sit down to write. This is why so many people hate to write, because there's no joy in writing when you're taught that it's all a bunch of rules and regulations that we never really memorize entirely. We don't really understand, and it does nothing to produce the joy that writing should be producing, or the sense of freedom it should be producing. So we need to shed that suit of armor. George Orwell, I'm going to quote George Orwell, who said, "The imagination, like certain wild animals, will not breed in captivity." And we were held in captivity by our English instructors. They didn't know that they were doing something wrong. I don't think that was the case, but it happened, and we need to be aware of it. They need to be aware of it. We need to be aware of it, because once we're aware, we can act to the contrary. And I get that writing is a technical, believe me, I understand it's a technical activity. It's not a simple process. Some people get it and some people don't. So some people have an affinity for the written word while others don't. But that affinity is with writing, it's not unlike learning a musical instrument or a foreign language. Some people have a knack for that, some people don't, depending on how our brain is wired. There are those who, I've known people who take the musical instruments very quickly and easily, and ditto for new languages. That's why it's so often said that good creative writing cannot be taught, because you're either wired that way or you're not. However, it doesn't mean we can't be better writers. And it doesn't mean that people who have been repelled through their English classes away from writing couldn't have appreciated writing, at least to the extent that they didn't see it as a deplorable activity, something to be avoided almost at any cost. So again, some people say your mind either works that way or it doesn't. And there is some truth to that. But there is also truth to the argument that when you run young people, fourth, fifth, sixth graders, through a gauntlet of criticism when they're making their first writing efforts, when you turn that into drudgery, you will kill any enthusiasm for the craft. Why would a young person have experiences like that, of that kind, starting in grade school, and then develop a passion for writing? That's not going to happen. So what you have left after that process, after that whole experience, is a group of young people who have a natural aptitude or an affinity for writing. How many more of us would have taken to writing, albeit with less passion and enthusiasm, if they had found some psychic rewards from the act of writing? So what are those psychic rewards? It's the ability through writing to embody any number of individuals, situations, experiences, and so on. It's the ability to take risk on the page, risks of any kind, without truly endangering ourselves. And it's the ability to play with concepts and even different realities in a way that stretches the mind and the imagination. I remember talking with the late author Campbell Black, who wrote horror novels under the pseudonym Thomas Altman, and he wrote under other pseudonyms for other genres as well. He was quite prolific. And he told me that he had been a spy. He had been a pregnant woman. He had been an evil force in the world, and innumerable other things, because he was a writer. George R.R. Martin, the man who wrote Game of Thrones, the Game of Thrones series of novels, before it was ever on Netflix, I think it was on Netflix anyway, says, and I quote, "A reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. The man who never reads lives only one." I kind of mangled that, so let me read that to you again. "A reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. The man who never reads lives only one." End of quote. Now, the same can be said for the writer. Living 1,000, well, maybe not 1,000, dozens or hundreds of different lives in one. And that is where the English teacher should have begun, by asking young boys and girls to think about what they want to be or a situation they want to change and take it to the page. Take it to the document and let their imaginations expand and breathe and run freely without restraint. We'll get to the periods and semicolons and the conjugation of verbs later. But first, feel what is possible with writing. Live within your own imagination as boldly as you're capable of doing. Then we get to the mechanics, because that's when you will have enthusiasm for getting the mechanics correct. Once you love writing, you want to get the mechanics correct. You want to get those details correct after you're sold on the craft and the freedom it can give you. So I urge you to write freely and with reckless abandon. We can always scale back later. The bigger issue is actually giving ourselves the freedom to let it rip, to really set ourselves free. It's far easier to curtail our excesses after the fact than to write timidly and then try to expand our prose into more brightly lit or adventurous territory, however you want to put it. So again, I urge you, write freely and with reckless abandon. I've been writing all my life, and it's still a struggle to do that. And no doubt it's a struggle for many of you as well. Write freely and with reckless abandon. This is Mike Consol for Novelist Spotlight, wishing you the best of luck and skill with your writing.